All right, guys, let's get moving then. I'm really glad you're here, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's Friday, which is always kind of the slow day at the conference. I'm sure everybody was at the 10:30 showing of show for Cirque du Soleil last night. I found out there's a 10:30 show for Cirque du Soleil. Only in Vegas would you have a 10:30 Cirque du Soleil show. But anyway, thanks for making it. We're really excited to have you here. So you are at Nerd Plus Art. I'm the nerd. Nate's the artist, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. My background is in computer science. Nate's coming from a broadcast design background. We work for a company. I guess I'm going to have to walk over here a bunch. We work for a company called Identity Mine. And Identity Mine is a company that appreciates both nerds and artists, and that's why we found our home there. We have a passion for user experience design at Identity Mine. And as you know, user experience design requires both nerds and artists. We love to create software experiences that people love. And that love, I think, there's a lot of love going around. That love comes from the artists mostly, I think. They're the lovers. The nerds, on the other hand, the developers are the guys who make the love happen at the end of the day. So we're a company that does both. I'm curious, how many developers, nerds, do we have here? Oh, that's everyone. Uh-oh. Did you guys not read the description? How about artists, designers? Okay, well, that's nice. Show some energy. That's good. Well, so I want to take a minute, and first of all, I guess I'll just talk to the nerds for a second. So nerds, we're glad you're here. Welcome. I want you to take a minute, though, and evaluate why you're actually here. Like, take a minute and think about the fact that you're at MIX, first of all, already kind of the arts here. You know, you skipped over Tech Ed and PDC this year to come to MIX. And not only that, you just came to a session where the tagline was, empower your inner artist. I think you guys are searching for something if you're here. So maybe it's time to step back and evaluate. And if you find that that is you, you're a nerd that has an inner artist waiting to emerge, then call me, especially if you live in the Seattle area or are willing to work remotely and have a dedicated office space in your home, then definitely give me a call because we're looking for people like you. But we're glad you're here. As we go through this content, a lot of this might be review for you. If you're doing a lot of XAML or a lot of WPF, you may know some of the snippets may not be all that new to you. So I hope then that this is a creative exercise for you today. We're going to look at a lot of the application of code and how you might use some of these concepts to actually create new kinds of experience or to kind of push the envelope. So I hope this can be a creative exercise for you. But now if I could take a minute and talk to the artists. I know that we have some artists in the room. So this content was really developed for you guys. The artists hopefully are the people who are going to come away from this learning a lot. My guess is that you're here because you're passionate about creating user experiences, right? And our goal today is to give you more tools to let you do that. So this is not a new thing, right? I guess masters of, I don't know, marble, like the guy, what's his name, Michelangelo. Those guys were masters of their tools. I hope that you're here because you want to become a master of your tool, and in that way become a better artist or a better designer. Nate and I are both part of a team that kind of straddles that line between developer and designer. So like I said, Nate's coming at it from a design background, I'm coming at it from a development background, but we kind of meet in the middle. And we have a job that is called integrator. So this is a job that's people have been talking about a lot at the conference. I think it's a really exciting job. This, by the way, is one of the many jobs that we're looking to fill. So like I said, if this is your passion, definitely look me up afterward. By the way, that's Nate, and that's me, and that's Craig. Craig is not an integrator, although he does write some COBOL from time to time. So if we need COBOL integration, so that's why we keep him on the slide in case we ever need COBOL integration. He'll be the man for that. He has an eye for the COBOL and great design. It's a rare combination, COBOL and great design. But, so let me tell you how the story of how the code snippets came about. So on this integration team, our job, like I said, is to kind of sit between the developers and the designers, and we take what it is that the designers want to accomplish and what it is that the developers know how to accomplish, and we try to bring it together, try to actually make things real. I have a personal goal of making my job obsolete, though. And I mean obsolete in the sense that I still get paid, by the way, if anybody is. But my goal with this stuff is to make my job less important in that workflow. I would like the designers to be able to be empowered to push their creative ideas as far as possible. And so you are seeing today what is part of a big experiment that we have. So the idea was, or rather, let's say the premise is that when you start working in Blend, you are limited to what Blend can do for you. And what Blend can do for you is edit XAML. And now someday that may change. Maybe someday they'll be more like a WinForms designer where they generate some code for you. But today, they've taken that restriction, I think it's a sensible one, that they stick to editing or modifying XAML. And that works because XAML will do so much. But there are times when you hit walls with that model. And so we had this experiment, this exercise, and we thought, well, there's all these great artists, designers on our team that are trying to do very, very creative things. And what if we could help push back those walls for them just a little bit? If we could come up with a handful of code snippets that we could give them in a way that they don't necessarily even need to understand them. They just need to know sort of how to fill in the blanks, so to speak. What would those be and how would they use them? So we started coming up with this, and really what we did is we started looking at the stuff that we're actually doing. Like I said, Nate is a designer kind of moving into this middle role of an integrator. Actually, I should say having moved. He's an awesome integrator. So a lot of this is actually the stuff that he is employing in practice regularly in his actual work life. A couple of caveats about this. First of all, this is about enabling creativity. It's an experiment, like I said. It may fail. But it's about enabling creativity. It is not necessarily about creating production code. So we are not going to take any flack for not following best practices about architecture or best practices about how it is that you structure your project, those kinds of things. It's up to you to coordinate with your actual development team to make sure that you're following whatever best practices you guys have in place. That said, you won't be writing bad code. It just might not be in the places where your developer would expect to find it. We're going to do a lot of stuff by double-clicking on event handlers and opening up window1.xaml.cs, that kind of thing. So a couple of expectations to set. So first of all, this is to you artists. To be successful at this, and like I said, it is an experiment. To be successful, the first thing that you need to do is have a willingness to write some code. And then I actually thought about that, and I thought really the more important thing is some willingness to ignore some code. So actually what we're going to do is give you a bunch of code and tell you to ignore most of it and just focus on a handful of bits of that code, a little bit of that code. Second thing is you may have to do some math. It's a very, very small amount of math, or rather I should say as much math as you care to do. But there are some of these snippets which will require some math, some basic programming. We're not going to give you the primer in C#. We're also going to expect that you know how to use Blend. So we're going to start with Blend and then always move into Visual Studio. And I'll try to put some links together to kind of bring you up to speed if you haven't ever written any C#. We don't expect you to be programmers, but you do have to know a little bit. And then, of course, you have to understand the epsilon transitions. Well, no, I take that back. Actually, Craig worked around this using some COBOL, so we don't need that one after all. So fortunately, we got you off the hook with that. So then the last thing that I tell you before we jump into the code is I hope that you can see this as a creative exercise. So devs, there's a lot of code here that you already know. Think creatively. Artists, there's a lot of code here that we're just going to give you. So think creatively. This is a creative exercise. See the stuff, see what it does, think about how you would employ it to make your best ideas a reality. And hopefully, as you do that, new worlds are open up to you, and it does become a very creative process. The process of creating code, and I guess the point is coding can be creative. That's where I wanted to go with that. So without further ado then, let's take a look at some of the code. And I'm going to kick this off. We're going to let Nate take the first stab at a couple of the snippets. And here they come, 10 snippets.
All right, we're going to pray that the monitor kicks over here. It was working, so I'm going to have to see if I can kick it again. Let's see if we see some colors show up. Ta-da, all right. So I'm actually going to have to move all my work over on the other monitor and then look down here to do it. But okay, so just set some expectations, and I'm probably going to have to reduce my monitor size so people can actually see something. As designers, we like to have incredibly high resolution, but it probably doesn't work so great for people in the back row. So yeah, just set some expectations for I'm specifically talking to the designers here. The reality is when we look at C#, my experience in C#, there's no training. It's all from me playing in places I'm probably not supposed to be. And honestly, so to tell you about a little bit about my process, I'm a total Blend sellout. I love Blend. It's one of these things where if you ask me what I think the right tool to start prototyping in is it Adobe? Is it the ones that you're comfortable with, or do you need to start using Blend? I would probably try to sell you on Blend just because I know the advantages of it, and some of the advantages are I can do layout really quick, and I don't have to spend a lot of time doing layers and all that kind of stuff. It's just I'm so much faster using it, and there's a bunch of these little tricks that have made me that much faster. So when I'm using this stuff, I'll just kind of cruise along, and I'll be doing things the way I know I was told to do. We've gone to all these sessions, and they tell us how to draw with Blend, how to style templates with Blend, do all the different things, their style controls and template controls with Blend. I get into this stuff, and I know how to do it the way I was told to do it. And then I just hit this blocking point where it's like, well, I want to do this, but there's no logical way of doing it. And so at that moment, I start to think to myself, yeah, what would be the logical way I would do it? And that's where I think, like, for designers to recognize the big X in XAML is that this is a really extensible platform, and when I look at Blend and I look at all of the properties that you can tweak on all the different controls and the big candy store of controls that you can play with, it's really exciting to me. And then it just gets all that much more exciting to me when I say, wait a minute, I could actually extend these things. And you can extend like everything. So when you find out that there's a click handler on a button, you can extend it. So that was kind of a aha moment for me that kind of extends past like the typical design role. Last night I was this whole week I've been kind of talking to people, getting their feeling about, hey, I'm going to come up and I'm going to try to talk to designers about dependency properties and attached properties and routed events. And most people kind of laughed about it, and they're like, I don't think a designer cares about a dependency property. I don't think they care, what does it mean? They really just want to design. And really what it's doing for me is it just allows me to not be encumbered by the technology, because I'm only encumbered by my own creativity, and so I just keep moving that way. So let me set my resolution on this monitor a little bit lower. That better? Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about for designers in the room is using VS is a really, really functional tool. The code editing, like the IntelliSense and all that stuff, it's like great way. It's like a fast access to the SDK. It's just a great way to explore the code. If I didn't have it, I'd be in a lot worse shape than I am now. So if you think that you don't want to use VS, you're a designer, I'm just going to challenge you: start playing with it, start using it. Don't think that VS, like if you don't have a license for VS, most of us should have them because we got them in our bags, but you can use C# Express, and the code, like the snippets that I'm going to show you in a second here, work in that as well. So the snippets that we have, we're going to post online so people can download these. These are nerd snippets, and it's a VSI, it's a snippet installer. You just have to run it, and it's going to pop up a window, probably on this monitor.
It'll ask you if you trust it, and you should definitely say yes. You totally trust it.
So I've already installed them. I'll just keep telling you, do you trust it? Yeah, sure. Big red X. Hit finish. All right, since it's already been installed, it skipped the install, but now I've installed snippets. So now I have some code that we are going to tell you is useful code for designers to use. And it's accessible through shortcuts in Visual Studio. So I'm just going to show you quickly how these shortcuts work. First, I think the best thing to do is always start from within Blend, because that maps closer to the design experience. So if you just right-click and say Edit in Visual Studio, this is going to kick me over into Blend in the project, with the project that I'm editing in Blend right open. So it's going to be really hard to read. Should I up the font?
Oh, yeah, that's a good call. Can you guys read that? Okay, I think we're okay then.
Okay, cool. So then I'm just gonna roll. So just to access the nerd snippets that we're going to show you here, we just type in nerd. And you see there's two types of nerds here. There's Silverlight nerds and WPF nerds. We have both of them. Once you see a code snippet, you just say tab, and then tab again, and it gives you the list of all the code snippets that we're including. So here's attached properties, custom controls, dependency properties, etc. So just to access one, you can tab through them, or you can just choose one, and it automatically creates that snippet for you. So again, like I couldn't explain to you what a public class is. I probably could a little bit, but for a designer, I think the argument is just know right now. Like I said, I wanted to create a custom control. If you look in Blend, I talked about our candy store earlier. If you look in the little chevron on the left down here, there's a tab called Custom Controls, and right now, nothing inside of Custom Controls. If I go to my regular controls, I've got all sorts of stuff. You hit Show All, and you realize that the platform has just a huge amount of controls for you to play with. But what I want to do is I'm going to start by creating a custom control. And if I just derive from just the base control, there's really no functionality in it. It's just I get some of the WPF property stuff for controls, or WPF system for controls. But the real value for me as a designer is to say, okay, well, I've got a control that really is a button, or it really is a list box, or it really is one of these existing controls that I want to add some existing functionality to. So it's like, I can kind of stand on the shoulders that already exist and extend the platform, like I was saying, the extensible thing. So all I need to do is, in my application in Visual Studio, you saw earlier I added this, let me kick this out of here. I'm going to use nerd, and I'm going to choose to create a custom control class. And the first thing it asks me, you can see that it's got this big blue highlighted, and there's a couple green highlights throughout here. It asks me, what do I want to name it? If you mouse over, you'll get some information about what you need to actually fill in on this stuff. So it says the name of the custom control. So I'm going to call this one. So example of it, like extending a control that really made sense to me. A long time ago, when I was doing a lot of Flash development, they had a component called image button, and it was just the button functionality that you provided an image source for. And it worked, and it was just a really fast way for me to actually get that image, just a button that was just like an icon. So I'm going to just call my control image button. And I'm going to hit tab. And you can see it's automatically going to change names throughout that code there. And it's going to tab to the next thing that I need to provide. And so it's asking me, what type of control do I want to derive from? I'm just going to choose to derive from button. And it'll automatically, the IntelliSense will fill in for me. And there's the button. So I could have changed it to anything, list box item. And now if I save this, go into Blend, I'm just going to hit F5 to build and run the app. There's my app with nothing in it. Now if I look in the asset library, under custom controls, there's my image button. So I can actually take this and draw it, and really, it's just a button. That's all I did was derive from button. So now I've got a custom class that is a button. So it doesn't really do me any good at this point because I haven't extended anything. I've just derived, and now I want to actually go a little bit step further and do exactly what I was saying before. Like before, on the image button class that I used before, I had an image source property on it, and so that goes into the next step of I can actually create dependency properties. And the dependency properties for designers, like the special value here is that in Blend, we've seen that we can set resources on properties, we can data bind properties, we can animate properties. When we create these dependency properties, these are all things we can access through the timeline panel to animate them. We can access them inside of the properties panel to set values to them. And what's really cool when you create some of these properties is that if there's special editors for those kind of properties, for example, a brush has a brush editor in the blend properties panel, or a thickness has like the margins clock syntax editor in the properties panel. If you create those dependency properties, then when you see them in Blend, you get to get the fun editing surface for it. So I'm going to just jump back into Visual Studio, and I'm going to get inside my image button here. I'm going to call up another nerd snippet, and the one I want is dependency property. And again, it's, like I said, I don't read half of this stuff. I'm only really paying attention to the ones that are highlighted and asking me to fill them out. So I'm going to actually, like I was saying, we're going to create an image source property. And right now, by default, the snippet actually fills it out as a bool. I'm just going to go in and, I could call it a brush. I could do a thickness for doing like margins or padding. Or I could do image source. All right, so save that. And get back into Blend. I'm just going to, you won't see any of these changes in Blend until you compile the app. Did you see what I did wrong, Robbie?
I didn't see.
Oh, yeah. Good. Just seeing if everybody's awake. So it didn't switch it to, it just did it now. So false, I'm just going to change that to null. This is like the default value for that property.
You've got the...
Did I take too many out?
Yeah, and I'll just type null right there. Yep.
All right.
That's how real it is, guys. Nate's just using the snippets.
Compile it again. Okay, there's my image button. Here's my app with the button on it. Now if I select that button, then I can say, go to the properties panel, search for image. There's my image source property. So now I can apply an image to it. So really quick, I'm just going to go back to my project. I'm going to add an image to my project. And I actually do this all the time. Or not existing project, add existing item. And really, I've done it like 7 different ways when I did in projects. So it used to be I'd create like a button with a style that's invisible, and then I put an image in the content. And I've seen a lot of other people do that. Or I just create one-off styles over and over and over again. The value of doing this, setting this property, is I'm going to actually put an image in that button's template, and then I'm going to template bind it to the image, and then I can actually toggle like mouse over states and all the things I have available in the control templates. And it's a much easier way for me to use these image buttons in real projects. So add existing item. I'm just going to go to my desktop, and I've got a shopping cart icon on the desktop. So now when I select my button, go to properties, say image source, there's my shopping cart. All right, now I've set it, nothing. You don't see anything at this point. I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to edit the template of button. Just say, I'm going to actually create an empty one just to throw away all the visual style of the button. I'm going to add a grid element. And inside the grid element, I'm going to find an image control. Here's image. All right, so here's my image inside of my button. So now what I want to do is I want to actually template bind. So using the template binding here, I'm going to template bind it to my property, that custom property that I declared earlier, image source, and now my button shows up. So now in markup, this just looks like image button with a image source of the button image that I want to use. So it's something I use all the time. Where this gets interesting, and that just like I said, dependency properties are properties that have data binding and setting property resources or setting resources and animating. If I wanted to create a list box item that had an image source property on it, I would have to start deriving every control out there. But one of the ways I've done this is I use attached properties, which the value of an attached property is that you can basically declare it on one element, and any other element can arbitrarily use that property. And so if I create my image source on, for example, on window 1, actually I can even just declare it on my existing, let's reload that one because I added the image to it. I'm going to declare an attach property just on my existing one. I'm just going to create a brush here. So let's keep it in the region. Nerd. Here's my attach property. And I'm going to call this my special brush. It's a type of brush. This time I will actually change it to null for the default value. And so now I've created an attach property. If I go back into my test app here, hit F5. Let's run my app here. I'm just going to close it over here so you see it. If I look in, when I select, let's get out of the template, select the button. We're searching for image right now, but I want to find my special brush. And I'm going to look in the miscellaneous panel. In the miscellaneous panel, you can see this right here, image button dot my special brush. It's kind of hard to see because it's being cut off here. But like I said before, if I click on this, I'm going to get the custom editor, so I can actually dial in a specific brush. I can actually jump back into my button. Oops. Edit the template of my button, and I'm going to select the grid, and I'm going to change the fill of that grid, or the background of that grid, to template bind to the image button.mySpecialBrush. So now I've just passed in that specific brush. I'm using that. Well, the value of the attach property is that, oops, if I exit the template here, and I'm going to select the layout root element, it's not showing up here, so hold on here. Would I have to have declared it on window to make it so everybody can get to it? Is that what my problem is? Or
I don't know. I'm kind of looking at a weird angle here. Let's see what's going on.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of, because I want to make sure we're not running out of time here. So
okay.
The point about the attached property, the way the demo should have gone, is that property should be declared on all controls, and I should be able to set it just like I did on just the specific control that was declared on. Since it's an attached property, it can attach to everything. And then I can create an image source that I could use on list box item button, and then I just provide that one property all throughout.
Very cool. Okay, so is this me now? Okay, so I'm going to tell you about another cool snippet. So this is a value converter. A lot of you guys probably have used value converters. Hands. Okay, maybe not everybody. That's good. Value converter gives you the flexibility to, you've worked with bindings, right? Value converter is, imagine binding is a wire, and that you stick something in the middle of that wire that changes the value somehow, right? I was trying to think of like a electricity analogy. Maybe it's like that thing you have to have when you go to Europe, the wattage converter or whatever. I don't know. It's a weird analogy. But anyway, so I'll show you where we use the value converter in this project. This is a project that we did for a company, and I've actually removed the branding from the application, but so that you can't know who the company is. I'm sorry, but this is an app that we did, and it's an interesting application. It's designed to be kind of a screensaver. This is an application that they would have in a public space, and when nobody's interacting with the app, they wanted to just have something running that kind of reinforces their brand, is comfortable, is cool looking. So we went with kind of this park, like autumn leaves theme. So if you look at what's going on here, it looks cool, but there's sort of a simple thing happening. These are actually just a bunch of leaves, and you could get this far in Blend. Each of the leaves is just kind of rotating using a rotate animation. So any designer could get this far in Blend. What I want to do is show you how you could use value converters and custom controls to kind of take this to the next level. So I skipped a thing. I want to talk about custom controls before I do value converters. Nate showed you how you as a designer can create a custom control. You can actually go a lot further, and we'll get you a list. But there are a ton of great custom controls that are community provided, also provided by vendors. There's a rich WPF vendor community creating custom controls. We do it. I see some of our other partners in that space here also. So we have a product called Blendables. There's other great controls in that market, as well as, and this is the thing takeaway, a lot of really cool free stuff. If you were to come into here, I want to show you how we can use a custom control to sort of up the ante on that motion a little bit. So we saw that we felt like it was a little static. It looked more like leaves on the surface of something rather than leaves that were actually moving around in space, being blown around like we want them to be. So what we did is we worked with one of our designers and we had him create an image sequence. And so if you've worked with image sequences at all, basically you can use a tool like After Effects. You go into there, and then you can basically do some 3D modeling or do whatever it is you want, essentially create a movie. In this case, we did some 3D modeling, and we came out with this sequence of images. The thing that's cool about this is it maintains the transparency of the images. So as they move over each other, it does the right thing. So we created a custom control, and we actually use this all over the place. We created this custom control that allows us to take the sequence of images and play them back like a little movie, right? Like a little flip book. This is a control called Image Sequencer, and actually we're giving this away to you. So if you can download this little control. Just one of the many free controls that are out there. But notice I've already got that control in my project. So like Nate said, it shows up. And as a designer, you would either get this from a developer or you would find your cool control that meets the scenario in the community somewhere. But right here we have our image sequencer. What I'm going to do is come into the project. Each of these leaves is in this little control called leaf.xaml. It's a little user control. And as you can see, this is just an image, this guy called leaf image. So I'm just going to delete that and replace it with this custom control called image sequencer. So now we have our image sequencer right there. We'll give it the same name because there's a little code that runs against it. So we call it leaf image. And then leaf image has a property like the ones Nate just showed you called source folder. And if you remember, our folder was called sequence. Hit OK. And then now, can you see that? It's running. It's very tiny. The tiniest leaves ever. That was the other thing the client wanted. So now I can change the width and the height on this, and we'll make it a little bit bigger. Where are we? So we'll say 250 by 250. So now when we run the application, guys, I'm not doing value converters at all. I just remembered the next thing isn't value converters either. I just love them. We'll get to them in a minute. But now look at what happens. So now we've got that sequence of images running. And we get something that feels much more interactive. The leaves look a lot more lifelike. I said interactive. It doesn't really feel interactive because you can't do anything, and we'll get there. It feels a lot more lifelike and a lot more fun. So to make this interactive, though, this is where we get into a really cool snippet. To make this interactive, you want to create a storyboard, right? Now the problem, though, is that we're going to create a storyboard on this control. But then that storyboard would just repeat over and over if we were actually just to call that same storyboard every time. What I'm going to do is we'll go into the animation viewer. And let's just create a simple storyboard. We'll call it touch. So that, the idea is when the user touches the leaf, it blows around or something like that. So if the user interacts with it. So we call it touch. And I'm just going to choose our leaf image right there. And we will just translate that. Now I'm just going to pick two values here because I'm going to show you how at runtime you can modify these values and how a designer would do that. So I'll just say we'll translate it by 200 by 200. We can close down this storyboard and look at the XAML real quick. So if you come up here, here's our this is our storyboard. And notice that we've got two translate transforms, one that goes moves the X value and the Y value. Now here is where we get into the next snippet. Choose this again. We'll come into our. You might not have even known this was here, but you can actually set events inside a blend. So we come down here and we'll use the left mouse button down event, wherever that mouse. There we go. Mouse left button down. And if I just double click on this, it'll take me into Visual Studio and it'll open up. It'll create that event handler for me, and then now I can just add my code right here. And we're going to use a snippet called storyboard. And this snippet allows you to access an existing storyboard. So in this case, it's our storyboard called touch, and then modify values of the animations inside of that storyboard. So if you remember, a storyboard is a container for multiple animations. So we have the storyboard, and then in the storyboard, we animate the X property and then the Y property. So type in nerd, and we get our list here. And I'm going to choose this one, storyboard. And it tells you what to do. Use this to customize and run existing storyboards. So hit enter. The storyboard name was, does anybody remember? I do. It's testing you. It's called touch. Right, good job. You guys are there. You're getting it. Awesome. Okay, so then, now here we have the ability you'll notice we're modifying the first animation, so animation 0, and we've made that very easy for a designer to understand. For the devs, look, we're modifying the index right here, right? So we'll just say animation 0 is the first one, and then here's our new value, and I want that to be random. So we'll just create a random object right here. And then down here we can say r.next, which will give us the next random value in a range. So I'm just going to say between -300 and 300. So that gives us a random value between -300 and 300, and it's going to animate that x property to some random value between there. There's another storyboard that I can use, or another snippet that I can use to add a second one of these. So I say nerd again. Use the second one. Now I'm going to say I want to modify animation with index 1, so it's the second one. That's fine. We'll just copy this code right here. And then, I was going to run this first, but in the interest of time, I'm going to actually show you one more snippet real quick. So when you run this, then so now we're handling the event. When the user clicks on it, it's going to animate that leaf in some random direction. We don't know where. But what I noticed is when we first did this, it didn't feel interactive enough, so we also want to play a sound. So I actually added a sound already to the project. It's right here, wind.wave. So now it's like you're the wind, right? That's the artist in me that comes up with things like that. Okay, so now we've also got this play sound snippet. So you can hit that. We just type in the name of our sound. So it's sounds/wind.wave. By the way, this snippet only works with WAV files. Sorry. But it's a really lightweight way to, you don't need a media element or anything. It's just super lightweight way to play sound. So now if we hit F5, hopefully my sound is on. You guys can hear. So now we've got our leaves running around, and oh, they've left us. Wait for one to come in. Now we can click on that, and oh, it's not. Oh, I forgot to actually create the animation, guys. I just did it at 0. I'm not going to go fix it, but do you understand what happened? I didn't move the timeline out, so it's taking 0 seconds to animate. That is not nearly as impressive as I want, and you can't hear it either. I don't know what's going on. Sound on the computer, I think, here, let's see if it works if I... Did you hear it? I could hear it. There you go. There we go. No, it did play the sound. It's just you can't hear it because I think the sound's not working. I don't want to spend more time on this, but you get the concept, right? So this is a way that we can let designers modify real-time the values of their animations, right? This is a really powerful thing for designers. Really easy to understand, too. I mean, it takes a little bit of thinking. And then the second thing is a super lightweight way to play sounds in WPF. There isn't the same lightweight way to do it in Silverlight, but frankly, you don't need it because Silverlight sound and media is actually very lightweight by itself. So that's why we don't have it for Silverlight. Okay, very good. So with that, I'll give time back to Nate, and he's going to show you how to use.
I'm going to come in after. I'll do interactive 3D after.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'm going to keep moving, and now I get to talk about my beloved value converters. Finally. So value converter, like I said, lets you handle the data inside of a binding. So designers who use Blend get bindings, and that's my experience anyway. You get that you can kind of wire up these properties, but a lot of times the input and the output need to be slightly different. So I'll give you a really concrete example. I wrote this app called Kazaml, which some of you might be familiar with. That's funny. Some of you are now that you have pins, I guess. So Kazaml does this thing. This is a really simple example of this. But I want to show you two things. One thing is that Kazaml does this thing where it appends the word Kazaml to the top of the title. So, and if I open up a new tab, now I've got default 1. So I'm actually, that's a binding. Can you see that? That's a binding at the top where I'm binding the name of the current document to the title property of the window. And then I need to append the /Kazaml, right? Really straightforward concept. By the way, this snippet exists both for Silverlight and WPF. So the other thing, and I'm just going to show you this really quickly, is if we come into our snippets here, and these are Kazaml snippets, different kind of snippets, but I'm going to drag in the Kazaml logo and show you one other thing that Kazaml does. Do you guys remember, if you've used XAMLPad, when XAMLPad breaks on you, it's kind of jarring, right? Everything turns red, and it's like your whole world just got awful. I want to do something a little bit more subtle in Kazaml. Not that the XAMLPad's bad, but it's red. So, So then now if we break this, it's a little more subtle. So you drop down with the error, and then I just wanted to fade to black and white, right? I thought that was kind of a nice metaphor. It's like Wizard of Oz, but in reverse, right? So instead of everything becoming color, now everything becomes black and white. So so I'm going to show you how I do both of those two things. In both those cases, I'm using a value converter. One case is a value converter that any designer could probably write by himself. The second one is a value converter that any designer could use if the developer gave it to him. So let's open up the XAML. This is imagine a version of XAML before it shipped where I only had those two things left to do. That is the version of XAML that we're looking at right here. Let's see. Here we go. So I can actually open this up in Blend. By the way, that's awesome, Blend team, that I can even open this. I was surprised that I could open it. It's awesome. So it opens up perfectly, except there's a couple of resources that don't resolve. So you'll see some errors when it first comes up. I'll zoom that out so you can see it. So here's our XAML. And let's do this so that we can see this. OK, so this object called this is the main window in XAML. And let me run this one real quick so you can see broken XAML. All right. OK, so here we've got broken XAML. Now notice that up here it doesn't say .xaml. I've lost my chance to tell you what app it is that you're using. So I need to get that back. So it doesn't say XAML up here anymore. And then right here, if I were to say set the background on this to be red, so that works. But then if I add some bad markup in here, it stays red, right? So we don't have our reverse Wizard of Oz moment. So we want to add those two things. So I'll quickly show you how you could create a value converter to append .xaml onto the text, and then how to make things go into grayscale like that. So if we come to our window, there's this property on window called title. See that here, this is our binding, right, that we've got. So look at our data binding, and I'll just show it to you. Right now, it's being bound to the selected document.file name, right? So whatever is selected, that document, the file name of that shows up in the title bar. What I want to do is create a value converter that just adds a little bit of text on the end there. So I'm going to come into main window.xaml.cs. Devs, don't cringe. Just know that it's for the better good that we're putting this here. And I'm going to create a value converter right inside of main window.xaml.cs. So here I use another snippet. This one is called, oh, it's down at the bottom. You can't see it. There it is. Value converter. And I'm going to call this window title converter. That's all I need to tell it. I give it the name, hit enter, and then it's generated some code for me. And then there's some comments here to help you know what to do. It says, here's where you put the code to handle the value conversion. Super easy. Gives you a default implementation where it's going to take the value. It thinks it's a double. A double is a number, designers. So it thinks it's a number, and then it's going to multiply that by 2. We happen to know that it's a string, right? And we're just going to add .xaml rocks on the end. We're going to up the ante in this one a little bit. So now, just like Nate did, I save this. We come back into Blend, and then I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-B, and that will just build it for me. When you build it, it refreshes everything, so you get the stuff we created. And now if I come back into the Properties window, let's find title again. Oh, it keeps doing that. OK, oops, title. OK, so here we go. So grab our data binding. And then now, you may not have even known this was here, but there are extra properties on this binding. Click down on that and hope you have a big monitor. And right here at the very, very bottom, I should really make this smaller, that's fine. We can click on our value converter. And right here, we can choose a value converter from our project. And right here, we have our window title converter. Just say, OK, that's the guy we want. And I don't know how to get out of this shoot. Here, let's do this. Uh-oh. Hope we can. Here, there we go. Finish. OK, now if we run it by hitting F5, really, there it is at the top. XAML rocks. Yes, it made it in. So that's a really simple version of what you can do with that. Like where we'll use converters a lot is like you have numbers and you want to turn that number into a brush. So if it's a positive number, you want a green brush. If it's a negative number, you want a red brush. We do stuff like that all the time. I'll show you a really sophisticated version of a value converter And that's one that takes an image and converts it to the grayscale equivalent of that image. And I'll just do this one really quick. So if we come back into our project, the actual thing that shows the WPF document is this control called WPF document view. So here's the text editor, and here's where the document is. And over here, there's this thing called error overlay. That's what comes down when you've got an error. And in there is the error overlay image. So this is where the image of the content gets displayed when you've got an error. On here, we've got a source property, and that's being bound to something. It's the error image. So there's a property called error image. Again, I can come in here, select my value converter, and I've already written this one. And this is free, by the way. You get Codeplex source code for this. So if you ever need a grayscale value converter, it's in here. And it's right here in example.controls and grayscale bitmap converter. So we hit OK, and then finish. And now when we run this, we get the cool reverse Wizard of Oz thing. So we say, background equals red, and then give it some bad markup. And there we go. Grayscale, it's black, but it's gray enough for me. So there you go. That's how you use value converters. Devs, if that was new to you, awesome, because value converters should totally be in your toolbox. Artists, I hope that you can, let me know how that goes. I would love it if you guys can use value converters. I think it's a really powerful concept, and it really doesn't block you and get you into, so that you can do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Okay, do you want to do events, or should I keep moving?
I keep moving.
Okay, I've got one more, and then we're going to give Nate a chance to show off some cool stuff. So we're going to cruise through this one too. So this, if you thought that was bad, guys, try this one on for size. So this is where you have to do some math. This is a layout application, or a layout snippet. So I'm actually going to start with a new project here, and we'll just, where's Blend? Let's create a new project in Blend. And actually, I'm going to create, in this case, a brand new project. And let's do a Silverlight project here, because I think that the layout stuff in Silverlight is awesome. So we'll just, that's fine. That's a fine name for it. So you know that inside of Blend, you have things like stack panel, right? If we create a stack panel and start adding stuff to our stack panel, so I'm just going to add some ellipses. You know that each panel kind of has its own layout behaviors that are defined by that. Honestly, layout is something that designers, I know that you're deeply passionate about, and it's something that can be kind of hard to do in a lot of platforms. I've seen a lot of hacky code to try to get good layout, and I see some heads nodding. There's a lot of hacky code that people use. This gives you a way to create layout code in a way that is performant, fits in with the rest of the system, the rest of the framework. So you can use it with panels and stuff like that. And it's also just a sophisticated way to approach layout. So what I want to do is show you how to create a custom panel. So one of the panels that I use all the time in WPF that Silverlight doesn't have yet, hopefully, is a panel called Wrap Panel. So what I thought I'd do is show you how to create a wrap panel. So what we can do is come into our page.xaml.cs. Now we're going to employ the Silverlight snippets for the first time. So now we type, instead of nerd, we type nerd SL. And then here, oh, whoops, I hit tab twice. You guys got a preview of things to come. So we're going to choose the panel snippet. When I told somebody I was doing this talk, and I told them I was going to tell designers they could create panels, and they thought that was ridiculous. I don't think it's ridiculous. I think you can write panels. Granted, it is not the easiest thing that you're going to do, but it's just math and just a little bit of code. And we're going to get you started, too. So here's your panel, and let's just call this wrap panel, because there is no wrap panel. So we hit enter. So then here is there's two methods you have to think about when you're creating a panel. One called measure and one called arrange. And they do just what they say. So they get called in that order. So first measure will get called, and then later on arrange is going to get called. In measure, basically all you have to do is talk to each one of the items, your children, each one of the items in the panel, and say, hey, how big do you want to be? And you do that by calling measure on the element, and then telling it its maximum size. So in this case, I'm saying, hey, you can be as big as you want. That is sort of the easiest thing to tell an item, and that's what simple panels do. And for the kind of panel that probably a designer would create, that's a fine thing to tell the element. You can be as big as you want. That's what Canvas does, for instance. The second method is arrange, and arrange is what happens when it's time to put things where they go, right? And you do that by telling each item that is inside of the panel this is the rectangle, where you should go. And so a rectangle has a position, right, so you can move it around, and it also has a size, so you can change the size of it. So you say, here's where you go, and here's how big you should be. And this is the code that, as a designer, you can kind of think about and you write to make your panel work. So there's a really basic implementation here, which is just going to lay things up in a kind of a diagonal. So you'll notice what it does is right here, it says your code here. This is where you put the code. It goes through each of the elements in each of its children. And then it says, OK, the width can be whatever size you want to be, your desired size. Same with the height. And then it arranges you there. So the first one is going to be at, notice, left of 0, top of 0, and then the width and height that you want. And then we're just going to increment top and left by 100 each time through, right? So honestly, I think this is a very simple panel, not particularly useful. But you can write simple panels like this, and I think this is a great thing to give designers. I was going to try to just write this, but I figured that I may actually want to not have to think about writing this. So I created a little VS helper for me. I'm just going to drag this in. This is the code for the wrap panel. And this is really simple. A wrap panel works for very simple scenarios. But here's the code. So now we have a wrap panel. So I'm going to save this. I hope it works, actually. We're going to come in here, and let's rebuild this to pick up our wrap panel. Oh, shoot. Oh, we need to add this variable right here. OK. Save it now, and then build again. OK, cool. We're there. OK, so now that panel is just going to show up in our custom controls. We can grab a wrap panel now. Whoa. Whoa there. Come back. Whoa. Bummer. Let's see. There we go. Let's try that again. So we create our wrap panel. Now, guys, designers in particular, I realize that looked like math, looked scary, but honestly, look how awesome this is. In like 10 lines of code, now all of a sudden we have this panel that just does what we expect it to do. And watch, when we get to the end of the row, see, it even does the right thing inside a blend. And it just sticks them down at the bottom. This is accessible to you guys. You just need to apply yourselves. You can do it. OK. I'm not going to run it because you can see what would happen. It's working inside a blend. But I am going to show you where we use that in real life, that exact panel, except a little bit more complicated version. And this is in an application that we just did. How many of you guys are familiar with Newegg software? Me too. I love Newegg. By the way, awesome company to work with. They have an incredible infrastructure. And we kept asking for web services or whatever, and they just had them. They just could do it, and 2 days later, you've got this awesome web service. So we built a prototype for them. This is an application that we're hoping to make real with them, and they were really excited about it. But this is an application for searching. So they have a huge, as you know, catalog of stuff. And I'm going to try to get through this really quickly. But let me just show you the XAML here really quick. Here is our wrap panel right here. Okay, so you can see that's the same wrap panel, or roughly the same wrap panel, running this application. I'm going to run it. And this is an app that lets you search through their, in this case, catalog of digital cameras. We're actually downloading some XML data from them. I hope my wireless works, so we get the images too. Oh, you know what? I've been having this issue where I've got to run things from Visual Studio. So let's open this up in VS. OK. Let me make sure that some properties get lost sometimes, and that's the issue when I try to do it in Blend. So I've got to. This is not something that you would normally have to think about. I've just got to turn this on. And turn on this guy. OK. So this gives you a very rich search experience over the digital cameras. We download an XML file from them, we parse it, and then we get this. And so then now I can look at their cameras, and I can say, oh, I'm interested in Canon cameras and PowerShot cameras, and only the silver ones because I think silver is awesome. So you get that, and then you could even say, well, I'm really looking for something that's kind of higher end or whatever. Anyway, you have this very rich experience this is, by the way, a great testament of what you can do with Silverlight. We download like a 35 kilobyte XML file, and then we're able to provide this like really rich search experience over the stuff that they have. The one thing about this, though, experience as it stands right now, is as you kind of move through these criteria, it's a little bit jarring, kind of the filtering process. You're not always sure what happened. We wanted to add a little bit of motion to this. So we've been doing some work around creating panels to animate. And we actually have a product in Blendables. It's our layout mix, where we have a panel that allows you to switch between layouts and handle animation and do a bunch of great stuff. We borrowed some of the technology from that, just the animation portion. And I actually added that into this project. So this is something that probably a dev would do. Right here I've got this thing called animating panel base. So now I'm going to come into my wrap panel, and instead of making this a panel, we'll make it animating panel base. And then I just need to make 2 changes down here in arrange. And I already have them. I kind of knew I was going to do this. So put them in there. So now when we run it, okay, the build. So let's run it. And now we've taken that same, now this is the takeaway. That same logic, the 10 lines of code or whatever we wrote, now gives us this really cool animating panel experience. So now I can say, when I search for Canon, I get an experience like that. And then I search for silver, and I get an experience like that. So much richer, more engaging experience. We can look at silver across the board. We could look at Nikon. I'll just show you the kind of end of this experience real quickly. So now you have the ability to, I don't have the room. Normally you get some deep zoom in here, but apparently the size is too small on the screen. But you can look at reviews, and you can also select more than one camera and compare reviews, do that kind of thing. So really cool app. The thing I wanted you to take away though is that you can very easily take a normal panel, not a lot of code, and turn it into an animating panel. And here's the great news is that if you attended Mike Harsh's session, then you saw that he actually is giving a version of that code away. So this is another great example where the community is really helping to build up what you can do. So now you can get the animating panel base that we wrote. We shared it with Mike, and he's, I guess, blogged that, or I don't know. You guys will find it. It's out there somewhere. We'll include it in our samples here as well. So now, as a designer, you can create a very simple logic to do layout and then get the cool, kind of rich, interactive, and animating experience on top of that. All right, guys, so we're getting through these snippets. That's like 9 of them or something like that. We've got a couple left.
Should I do routed events or just go to interactive 3D?
What do you think?
I'll start with 3D. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we're getting low on time is the issue. We've got 3 left.
Okay. So this one isn't actually a snippet. We've actually just provided the solution for this project. We'll be putting it up on our blogs. We'll show links at the end here.
And Blendables.com is where we're going to host the snippets themselves and some of the samples that we're showing.
Come on, Glenn. All right. So earlier, Codeplex, they posted up the 3D Tools solution for it, which had a lot of really cool stuff. And one of the cool things was interactive 2D on 3D content. The problem with the interactive 2D on 3D content, you could open up those projects in Blend, but you actually, did I open the wrong one here? Sorry, my brain gets totally turned around here trying to get between.
Yeah, so you guys can't tell this, but Nate is actually like doing multi-mon because we couldn't project properly. So he is. So this screen is different than this screen. So he's trying to drive it over here. So.
All right. So this is just one of these tools that, for me, like actually brings doing design in 3D surfaces back to something I can do. Basically, what I've got is it's just 3D content here, but it's still 2D content mapped into the 3D content. So you can see rollovers on these buttons. If I navigate back to this list box, you still see I have that content is still interactive. It's just 2D regular styles that I do. If you go to the Codeplex and you download the samples, you can open those up and you can edit that stuff right away. But the thing that's different, that's really hard to do, is you can't actually see the way they do the visuals. You can't actually see it in Blend, so you'd have to like either create a separate Blend project so you could see it and then copy and paste your content into it, which isn't really, it doesn't work for making me fast and creative. So what I found out was really simple trick was all I do is I take the content. If we look in my resources, these visuals, Visual 1 and Visual 2, are what are being mapped between here and here. So all I do is I wrap Visual 1 and Visual 2 I turn them into control templates or controls rather than just blocks of XAML that you can't actually edit in Blend. And I take those controls and then I template those controls. So if I edit Visual 2 control template here, you'll see Blend will automatically jump into one of those pieces here. Let me navigate this over here. And I'm just going to rotate this guy off really weird. OK. So now if I jump back out, you'll see immediately an update to the visual. This is one of these ones where I'm just showing this from the designer's perspective of you can actually see your changes applied immediately. If I F5 and run this, I can actually, have control over my 2D content that's being mapped onto a 3D. I've done a lot of projects like this. There's a lot of ones most all these ones are like ones that were actually born out of real client projects that we've done, and these were the tricks that we did to actually keep moving forward, and that I was able to communicate things to the developer of what I actually wanted, and then they created real rich controls that did the right thing for me. But this allowed me to communicate something that just didn't actually, I couldn't show this in a static comp, and I needed some tool, and like I said, I like using Blend as my tool of choice to really get the experience that I want. Do you want to jump into C-Dragon, or should I just comment on it?
Let's do C-Dragon real quick, and then I think we should probably wrap it up because we're running out of time. But, OK, guys, so the last snippet that I want to show you is another Silverlight snippet. Silverlight 2 snippet. So I'm going to, again, start with, actually, I'm going to start with the project I already created, and I'll explain why. This is the snippet that, so the multi-zoom stuff, really cool, right? You guys are getting excited about multi-zoom. Deep zoom, right? Multi-scale image, deep zoom, it's confusing to me. So one of the things that's, first time I saw that, actually, I was actually in Mike Harsh's office, and he showed it to me, and he said, hey, it's working. And I looked at it, and I thought, oh, that's just an image. Like, how do we zoom? And he said, oh, well, I haven't wired anything up, right? That is totally legitimate because they want to give you a lot of control over actually how you handle the interactions. But the fact is that as a designer, you don't have the ability probably to write those interactions in an easy way. So what we wanted to do is allow a designer to very quickly get up and running, get up to speed with a multi-scale image. So here I've created this project, this multi-zoom project. And the only thing that is non-standard about this is I actually already added the images themselves. So here's the output from the Deep Zoom tool, Deep Zoom Composer, that's already in this project. Other than that, this is just an empty project. I'm going to open this up directly in Visual Studio, although you could do it either way. So then I'm just going to come right here where I would normally add event handlers, type nerd SL. Then one of these right here is our deep zoom snippet. I hit enter, and this just created a bunch of code for me. And we'll just call it zoom image, that's fine. This is the source for the images, and I actually happened to know where I was going to need those. So I just left them in the default location for the snippet, so I don't need to change that. And then hit enter, and then now, oops, there we go. So now it's saying paste this into your XAML file. So here's what we need. It's got all the event handlers on it already. And then below that is a whole bunch of interaction logic that we've created for you. So now you can come into page.xaml, paste that in there. And then if we run this, you can see multi-scale image in action. OK, so there we go. And you may remember this. We actually had a session last year about comic books. And it's interesting. We had a debate going into that about when we handed out the comic book, where should we put the ads? And so there was sort of this internal debate. Should we have an ad on the front page? And in the end, we took it to committee, like you do with all good design questions. And we ended up with, I think, a fair compromise, which is we decided to make it very tiny on the cover. So there is an ad. You may not have seen this because it didn't show up in the print very well. But there is this ad in there. And there's a discount, if you happen to see it, for Blendables, for session attendees. But then we got thinking, and we thought, there are people that are going to see this online. We should give them an opportunity. So we added some fine print in there. So if you zoom in, there's the fine print. And it does apply to online. You have to be attentive, though. So I had to get this far, I guess, in the session. So there you have it. A very small amount of code, or rather a very small snippet to produce a very large amount of code. We didn't get to a couple of the snippets, so I'll tell you about them. We had a snippet that covers routed events. I'll let Nate blog about it.
You'll blog about it.
Because Nate is the master of using these to create some really cool interactions. The other one we didn't get to is my favorite blend demo in WPF is the 5-minute RSS reader, where you can add an XML data source and you very quickly have an RSS data feed in there. The problem that you have in Silverlight is that there's no XML default data source right now. Maybe someday that'll come. We'd love that. But for the time being, there's a snippet in NerdSL in the Silverlight snippets that will create that RSS data source for you, so you can get up and running with an RSS feed really, really quickly. So those are the two we didn't get to, guys, but they're cool, so check them out. So really quickly, to kind of wrap up. OK, so these are the snippets that we covered. You can see there's a bunch for Silverlight, a bunch for WPF. My hope is that we can continue to expand this and make these snippets available to you, empowering designers and frankly empowering developers too to do cool stuff. This is where you can get them. If you go to blendables.com, there's a link to the labs page. You'll be able to track them down there. Check out Nate's blog if you want to learn more about routed events. You can check out my blog if you want to hear more about the Kazaml buttons, I guess is what I've been blogging about lately. So go to Nate's blog for sure. Go to my blog if you have time. And thank you so much. We loved sharing this stuff with you. Let us know. Give us feedback if these actually work for your designers. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Robbie. Now that we have these.
Oh.